Welcome back to Warren Today. As we continue the conversation around helping small businesses access the funding they need to sustain their business, I thought it was important to talk with someone who has experience as both an entrepreneur and also a source of funding for small businesses. Warren Galloway is the CEO of the National Microloans Conference and has been up and close with entrepreneurs over these last 6 months. Warren, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So can you talk more about what is a microloan?
Well, most business owners, when they're trying to seek cash, they immediately go to a bank because they hear about small business loans. Small business loans are typically originated by financial institutions. Microlending is another form of business lending, but it has a specific niche. And what I mean by that is they lend to startups or what we call first stage businesses that need additional cash infusion. They're typically organizations that are nonprofits that are funded through the philanthropic community. They're funded by banks. They're funded by the SBA. Their underwriting criteria is pretty flexible. It's not as stringent as banks. The max that you can receive from a microlender is $50,000. And typically, you don't have to have pristine credit. You can have bruises on your credit. And they are definitely lending to small businesses in not only in the metropolitan Detroit area, but around the state and across the country.
So how does a small business get access to this type of funding?
Well, there are a number of funders that are here in the metropolitan Detroit area. And that's one blessing that we have is that we have really, the community has wrapped its arms around this thing called microlending. Typically, you meet a microlender through your involvement as an entrepreneur in what we call an entrepreneurial ecosystem, meaning that you're going to workshops, you're doing Zoom calls, and then the representatives from these organizations typically are involved as well, and you network with them. But one of the other ways is to just simply Google microloans in Detroit, and you'll see all the microlenders that are available throughout the metropolitan Detroit area. So that's one way to reach out, or speak to an individual who provides services to small businesses, because they know typically who those microlenders are that will lend in your community.
With all these various different types of lending options, we have business grants and the government. What makes microlending so attractive?
Flexible underwriting criteria. So when I say flexible underwriting criteria, typically you're thinking like, okay, only people with bad credit should go to a microlender, but that's not necessarily true. You actually can have pristine, excellent credit and still benefit from a microloan. Let me give you a quick example. Say you went to a bank and the bank requires you to put 20% equity into the deal. Well, what if you don't have that 20% equity in the deal? If you don't have it, you're going to be turned down a bank, irrelevant of how great your credit is. But with a microlender, they don't require as much equity to be put on the table for them to match. So they might fund up to 95% of the loan that you need for your business, whatever purpose it's going to be used for. Anyone who's looking for good lending, who has bruises on their credit, or do not meet the normal underwriting criteria for a traditional bank would be someone who would look at a microlender.
Can you talk more about the different types of microloans? I'm sure there are microloans for women, microloans for if you want to make sure that you have sustainable products in your business and your brick and mortar. So talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, absolutely. So just like any other type of lending, you have lending for different purposes. We're going to start with, I'll give you an example. If you're a women-owned business, there's a microloan called the Michigan Women Forward. They do a phenomenal job of lending up to $50,000 to women-owned businesses. Now, they do lend a little to men, so they just say it's not as frequent, okay? Then you have a microlender that might lend to a business in a particular neighborhood. And I use Prosper Us Detroit. They have a microloan where if you live in certain low-income neighborhoods in the city of Detroit, they would lend money to you. Then you have the Opportunity Fund, which is a statewide lender who would lend to someone in any community in the state of Michigan if they qualify for. And then you have something called the Michigan Employment Loan Fund, who is a statewide microlender who lends to individuals with disabilities. So there are many, many more. And I've written a book about it, and I list all these resources in there. So depending on what category you fall in, there are several lenders that will lend to you if you're in need of some cash.
Is there a central location where a person can go apply for all these loans, or does each loan have its own gateway?
Yeah, each loan unfortunately has its own gateway right now. I would hope in the future that there will be a centralized application where you can just submit it one time and it'll go to multiple lenders. And you see a lot of that online nowadays. You know, these online companies say, hey, we can submit your information to 20 different lenders with one application. But the microlending world has not got to that point yet. So you have to go to each individual microlender through their gateway and apply for funding.
You mentioned that, you know, the microloan world is still kind of new as far as visibility. And last year you hosted the first ever national microloans conference here in the Metro Detroit area. Can you talk about that experience?
Oh, wow. What an incredible experience. It had been a vision of mine for many, many years to be the first to ever put together a national microlending conference. Microlending typically falls up under the category of what we call microfinancing. Okay, so microfinancing involves more than just microlending, but no one had ever put together a conference just solely focused on microlending. And that's what I did in September of 2019. I had 350 people in attendance, and this was over 2 days. I had 70 workshops. I had 70 presenters. I had presenters from across the country. I had microlenders, I had bankers, I had small business service providers. And the sole purpose of that conference really was to allow entrepreneurs to network with those who provided access to capital for them. It was unusual because I don't think anything like that, period, whether it was microlending or not, has been done where you bring the entrepreneurs, you bring the lenders, the service providers, and all of those who support entrepreneurs into one space, network for 2 days, and that's how deals begin to happen. You ask, is there a centralized way of communicating with the microlenders? Unfortunately, there isn't. But when you come to my conference, you get to rub elbows, break bread, and participate in workshops with those who definitely can provide you access to capital. So it was just an incredible experience. And the next conference will be in 2021. My goal is to have 500 people in attendance.
I think that's a doable goal, especially right now I believe the pandemic kind of set you up to be able to reach that number and beyond. And so you are also on one of the boards to help bring funding to the Metro Detroit area to distribute to our business leaders here.
Oh, absolutely. So I actually was on a couple organization boards where I was involved with helping determine who would receive some of the stabilization grant money. And then I just recently finished being on the board of helping a stabilization grant program in Lansing. And so what was beautiful about that experience is that I really got a chance to look at thousands of business owners' financial profile, to see where they were at currently compared to where they were before, to see if they qualify for these stabilization grants. And that's the most access I've ever had working with entrepreneurs. I mean, I literally have worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, but never had I had my hands on that many entrepreneurs at one time. And it was difficult. It was really difficult because you really want to help out everyone, but there's limited funding. And so what I thrived in doing this role of looking and evaluating these business owners is seeing who needed the most. Okay, who was closed as a result of COVID but could reopen as a result of getting a stabilization grant? Who would continue to keep their staff on board? Who would hire new people? And to me, the biggest impact is being able to hire people from the community and retaining jobs. And to me, I can say I did my part because the majority of the businesses I know that received the funding, they're still open today, to this day, and they still have people working for them on their staff.
If in fact a business does find themselves shutting their doors, what is the proper way to do that?
So in one of my books, Basic Questions About Entrepreneurship, I talk about dwindling down. And dwindling down is basically shutting your business down the right way. And what I mean by that is informing your employees, submitting your final taxes if you owe any employment taxes. If you have a landlord, notifying your landlord. If you have suppliers, notifying your suppliers. The list goes on. The reason why you want to properly dwindle down is that I'm a serial entrepreneur. And these businesses that are closing down, I mean, they're entrepreneurs. Guess what? Eventually, they're going to take a step back, but guess what? They're going to step back into the game. And if you dwindle down properly, I think it's easier for you to come back into the game. But if you shut down and burn people, not intentionally because you feel that, hey, I just got to shut down. That's how I feel. If you do it that way, you burn bridges, you owe lenders, don't pay them back. It's going to be even more difficult for you to get back in the game. But if you dwindle down properly, I think there's a greater chance of you getting back into the entrepreneurial world and being able to grow a business idea. So dwindling it down is critical for small business owners. They just don't think about it. So that's one of the things I've been preaching is how to dwindle down properly.
Mr. Galloway, thank you very much for your time. You've offered some great tips and strategies on how to move forward and not just survive, but thrive. And if you do find yourself in a place where you have to shut down, how to do it properly and come back stronger. So I think you've given us the whole gamut of what it looks like to move forward over 6 to 9 months during this pandemic. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Yes, thank you. And please feel free to invite me back at any time.
Yes, sir.